if I want to have control over the decisions being made, then, the one obvious path is to just have my own business.
So you grew sales by $500,000 the first year.
Pretty much. Yeah. Follow the rule book, that's the one. If you're not going to follow the plan with what, the parent company is doing, it's probably not the right thing to go into a franchise business.
Welcome to the Zero to Profitable Franchise Podcast, the best place for you to come to figure out the right franchise to buy and how to get and stay profitable. My name is Tariq Johnson, and I've bought, grown, and sold multiple franchises and got myself free from corporate America, and now I'm on a mission to help you do that too. Here you'll find some of the most in-depth profitable franchise secrets, tangible strategies, and specific mindsets to help you create your dream life through franchising. So what if you could build a franchise business that generates over $4 million a year in sales? Oftentimes people ask me, can you really build wealth with a franchise? Like, is it really possible to scale into a larger business? Well, today's episode has done just that. I talked to Adam, who's a friend of mine that I've known for about 7 years now, and he's built a significant sized franchise business owning 7 budget blind territories. He's built a multi-million dollar business, and he did this all after leaving a very successful role in the corporate world. Now get this. He actually picked the wrong franchise the first time. He got involved with a franchise that wasn't exactly what he thought it would be, and then quickly recovered, pivoted to a budget blinds, and then quickly scaled that business. So in this episode, we talk about how he went from owning only 2 territories to eventually owning 7 territories, and how he did that with his business partner. We also talk about what it's like owning and building a franchise business with a business partner. Now, this episode is a true masterclass in what's possible with franchise ownership and how to use it as a strategy to build a very lucrative business. Also, I have access to a number of profitable budget blind resales. So if you want to see if there's one in your area, send me and my team an email at info@tariqjohnson.com. Now, if you want to buy a franchise in the next 12 months or less, you should check out my free masterclass at buyaprofitablefranchise.com. And if you want to work with me and my team on finding or buying a franchise or resale business, then you can go to tariqjohnson.com/consulting, and we're happy to see if we can help. With that said, let's jump into episode number 8 of the Zero to Profitable Franchise Podcast. All right, everyone, I'm here with Adam Berryman. I'm super excited to start this podcast episode. Adam and I have a unique story behind how we met, actually. So I'm excited to jump into that. Actually, I'll just mention real quick, we met when I owned my franchise. He was right next door to me, and he would come in and get smoothies, and we would chit chat and talk and all kinds of cool stuff. I even tried to sell him my store, I think, when I had decided to buy that I was going to sell. I was like, hey man, you want to buy my store?
Yeah, you totally did. Oh, yeah.
That's funny.
I forgot about that.
Cool, man. Well, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah. Glad to be here. This is fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd love for you to just kind of give like a 60-second about like who you are, what brands you own, so people can understand, what it is that you do. Like, you're not, no hate to anyone who just owns a single franchise, but you're not like your average Joe. You have a pretty big business.
Yeah. I grew up, went to school to do finance and never really practiced. I ended up working in retail for 13 years and, enjoyed that, learned a lot of things, was in an environment where, it was a lot more it was corporate, but a little bit more of an open book where I could actually understand P&Ls and financials. And, it was a lot like, running your own business, but with the backstop of a big corporation and all the departments that come along with that to do the work. And so, over time, you learn a lot of things, politics change and things change, and you get to, I got to a point where I wanted to go out on my own, do my own business. And for me, franchising was the ideal considering my background, having all those departments behind me and, knowing my strengths, and my weaknesses, the franchising, was pretty obvious choice for me, just because they have a lot of those things already well developed and the operations are dialed, and so, I went out and started looking into the franchise world, and originally came across Supercuts. So, my mom was in the salon industry growing up, so I had, I wouldn't call it experience there, right? Because it's not like I'm cutting hair necessarily, but I spent a lot of time in salons and understanding, kind of how the operation works and all that. So kicked off at that, and it was a little slow rolling, and I needed, a little bit more to go, and I couldn't see the end game coming fast enough, and so my now business partner and neighbor, next door neighbor, we're hanging out, having a drink, and we're just, he was in defense contracting, and he was kind of burned out too, and we're like, hey, let's try to do something together as well, so we could both kind of expedite getting away from corporate America. And we started looking, and we weren't really coming across a lot of good things, and my mom, of all people, had bought a new place, and she had a company called Budget Blinds come out to do new blinds for her place that they were remodeling, and the lady, the franchisee, was just ranting and raving about it. And I when she called me, she's like, you should check this out, because she knew I was looking, but when I did, it was I'm like, I don't know much about that. I don't, it kind of sounded like it just wasn't like what I thought I would want to do with my own business ultimately. And, still working in retail, trying to get the Supercut started. And eventually I'm driving down the road, just had a bad day at work, which were pretty common at that point. And a commercial for Buy a Budget Blinds franchise came on the radio. And, it was a little, kismet, I guess, at that point. And I just jumped on and I called them and started talking to their sales department, the franchise sales department. And, they were like, hey, we don't have corporate franchises in your area for sale, because they kind of started where I'm at in Southern California. So it was a little saturated, but they're like, some of our friends that, have owned franchise for a while have theirs for sale in your backyard. So, we started in due diligence, and, the rest is history. That's so now it's Budget Blinds and Supercuts, ultimately. And so that's how we got here. This is
yeah,
that's the beginning,
That's the beginning. Yeah. And there's so much to that I want to unpack, because obviously we've been friends. We've talked a bunch of times. So I know a lot more of some of the off ramps of that story, which I want to dive into some of those things, because it's really fascinating. I didn't know that part of the story and how that happened, which is kind of crazy.
It is kind of crazy.
You're like, your mom had blinds done, and she's like, hey, you should think about this franchise, and that it all sounds very synchronistic.
Well, another, just a side point, a year ago from December, I actually bought more franchise for Budget Blinds in Nashville with my mom and my stepdad. That's even another extension of, how all that's went down.
That's amazing.
Pretty interesting stuff.
So how many in total in your franchise portfolio, can you tell everyone how many do you own of each?
So on the Supercut side, we only really made it to 2. So Lloyd, my business partner, came in with me on the Supercut, so we could kind of, go in together on all of it. I didn't want to be, we talked about it, and I didn't want to be, over here focused on one thing where, we've got this equitable partnership on the other side. So we want to be fair and make sure that we can both, evenly put our strengths and weaknesses, together to divide and conquer on both sides. But we only really made it to 2 stores on the Supercut side. And on the Budget Blind side now, Lloyd and I have 5 territories. So we started with 2 and made some acquisitions over, the past 6-7 years. And then I own now the 2 territories south of Nashville, South Nashville, Franklin, out that market. with my family, with my stepdad and my mom.
Wow. So in total, you have 7 territories with budget blinds and then 2 locations with Supercuts.
Yeah, well, one of the Supercuts stores sold last year, so we're down to one.
Oh, got it. Okay, congrats on selling
it. Thank you.
You saw the Wildemar one?
No, we kept the Wildemar one.
Oh, okay.
We had Laguna Hills that we had, and we sold it, and we kept the Wildemar one.
Got it. Cool, man. Awesome. All right. So now that everyone has like an idea of your background, which is, I mean, this is, that's exciting. Like a lot of people that want to buy franchises, they reach out, and for many people who have the dream of one day owning or building a franchise business, they would look at someone like you as to like where they want to be in 5-10 years. I mean, owning, 7 territories, that is, you have a pretty substantial business, which is awesome. And congratulations on your success. That's really cool.
Thank you.
So tell us about a little bit more about how you got started and what you were doing before, because I think a lot of people might be able to relate. You were very successful in the corporate world. Like that's not an easy leap to make. So talk about what you were doing before. I think you were working, at O'Reilly Auto Parts, and what you were doing, and then like really that definitive moment though of like, okay, after thinking about it, now I'm ready to pursue this.
Yeah, I to the end of the O'Reilly, era, I was, over, I was in operations. I was over, give or take 100 stores, kind of in the Southern California over into, kind of in the Southwest over into Arizona. And, I had, multiple stores, multiple locations, district managers, outside sales team. I had, I got P&Ls for every store every month. I got, really kind of, that was dialed. I had about 2,500 total team members at the end of the tenure. So it was quite the operation. I mean, it was, we were doing quite a bit of volume. And so, and it was a phenomenal, young man, in that kind of a position and career. And, but my life changed, I had my kids, and, my son was born, and, I traveled a lot, there's in working in retail, there's a lot of push and pull, like all the time. It's just, there's no off hours, late in the night, a lot of traveling, weekends, they're the busiest time, stores getting broke into, and just a lot of things can go wrong, where you have to get involved. And, with a new kid, and my wife has a full-time, career, it was just a little too much. I didn't want to sacrifice, some of the family life for, the job. And so, trying to build something around that was the goal, the end game. And it's worked out that way so far. So yeah, it was a smart move in hindsight anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. And tell us about that moment though, of like, okay, so, obviously all this is weighing on you, right? You're doing all this traveling, you're working a lot. It's, to oversee over 100 locations, and in that capacity, it's a big responsibility. What was that moment of like, all right, I'm jumping ship. I gotta find something. I'm going to take the leap and take this risk.
I don't know that there's one, significant moment really. It's, you start, compounding things really. Ultimately, you start thinking about quality of life, and, my son really kind of made the biggest impact because, I didn't want to be away. I didn't want to be distracted. Now granted, I can be that way still, but it's not near as significant, not near as, forced. I have a lot more control over all that than I did. But I wouldn't say there was any significant moment. It was a period of time where, I working for a big publicly traded company, working in retail, you don't always, I'm very independent, and to have my hands on things. I like to make my own decisions and research and, all that. Well, you get to a certain point and a company gets large enough. If you're not in the top echelon, you're not making the decisions. And, there's a period of time where I would just get a little frustrated with decisions being made and not having the control over them. And I think that, really got me thinking about, if I want to have control over the decisions being made, then, the one obvious path is to just have my own business.
Yeah. I think I know I can totally relate to that. And I'm sure so many other people can relate to that too. So then the first franchise business that you did was Supercuts, right?
Correct.
And that wasn't the Wildemar location, right? That was the other one.
So the process, with Regis, the parent company, was, you come in and you buy in, and they're giving you a geographic region, and it may have been similar for you. You don't necessarily go in with a particular store. They're starting to work you with their real estate team in a certain market to try to develop out. Now they're a very mature company, especially, again, they started in Los Angeles. And so, the saturation is pretty deep here. Some very long-term franchisees, that had those years of experience, atop of me coming in kind of entry level. So even they were getting precedence over stores, rightfully so, right? If they have a proven track record. And so, kind of in San Diego, and even in San Diego was very well developed old school franchisees. So they gave us the opportunity to go east into like kind of the Temecula, that Marietta market. Corporate owned the stores there, and they would build corporate stores just to play defense if nobody wanted to go there. So since their bulk of their franchisees were all kind of out of LA, nobody wanted to go that far. And so a lot of the conversation started around taking over a lot of that. So it's like, go improve, build a store. And eventually we're going to start packaging these corporate stores up, because they didn't really want to hold them. They only put them there for defense. And so, and then Laguna actually just came on to the market. He was a new franchisee that had a lot of other things going on, and he chose some other things over that. He had some real estate stuff going on, and, this one salon thing wasn't going to work for him. And, it was the same for us. My goal was to make that similar to my retail career, where I had groups and district managers and, had all that structure in place. I didn't necessarily want to be the owner operator, or even, just even managing the managers, ultimately, directly. And so, we went, kind of went down that path, and then for the longest time, they never even put those stores up. They just held them as corporate, stores. And so we ended up, we bought Laguna first because that was first available. The real estate developing side is very slow rolling, very, very slow rolling sometimes.
Yeah.
And then, you got to wait on the cities to approve, and then you got to wait on, all the permitting. And I mean, it can take years even. And it essentially did with the Wildemar store, which came last, ultimately.
Oh, I remember us like standing outside towards the end. I mean, that was a whole, I say that I probably picked the hardest to open my first franchise. I probably picked one of the hardest scenarios, which was opening in a new construction shopping center. I mean, just like trying to get them to like put a meter, like a gas meter, on the building. It was so difficult and so hard. And then and then we were trying to get, I think, approved for our final occupancy, but the landlord still didn't get their final inspection done of the building for the fire inspection, and the fire inspector wasn't coming out. And then there was like all these issues, and we're like, all like, what the hell is going on? Like, we're trying to open.
I need some sales. Like, this has been nothing but expenses up to this point. Man, it was painful. And it can be, it very well can be. So that's the Supercuts kind of, run up and how we got to that point. And so really by then we were already doing budget lines. We had already, but by the time we actually had a functional store, open store, we were already doing budget blinds at that point. So we had licenses, but we didn't have a business yet.
Yeah, got it. All right, cool. So Leah, let's pivot and talk a little bit about that, which is fascinating, because I think, most people, you just so happen to own two brands that are pretty much household names, I think. And people may not even realize they're franchises. But I remember, I think we were standing outside, like drinking a smoothie or something like that. And you were telling me a little bit about like, yeah, I think at that point you might have had 2 territories
Right.
with budget blinds. And you were
Right.
telling me, I don't remember the exact numbers, but I thought they were crazy. Something like you took like those 2 territories from 700,000 a year to like 3.2 million or something like that. Like, do
Well,
you remember
that
what
was
that
after
was?
we acquired a couple more of the
Okay.
territories. Yeah. We started the original owners had, that we bought the 2 territories from first. They interesting side story. It's the little brother of the founders of Budget Blinds. So when we got into doing our due diligence and got to meet the owners of this market, it was the little brother of the founders. And it was really cool because he's like a little historian for them, and
Yeah.
I mean, it was, and on top of that, I think we lucked out in a sense of, it gave us a little bit more connection. It gave us, of course, he probably had a little bit more substantial territory than most would get, because they're zip code based by, households and all that. And so, once we kind of dug in and started looking, and they were running about, an $800,000 a year business, something like that, kind of all in, from their house. It was just ran out of their house. Zach,
And that was 1 territory or 2?
that was 2. That was 2. And Zach would, he was doing sales. They, had another guy doing sales sometimes part-time, had a couple of installers. They would, do the work, and his wife they had a home office, and she just kind of run everything out of there. And, I look back on that, and it's just the amount of product and everything that they had to house in their garage. And, for them, it was a great, it's one of the cool things about Budget Blinds is because you can do that. And a lot of the franchise do, and run it out of your house and save on the overhead and, be pretty well profitable, like really profitable, if you're okay with that kind of work-life balance. When we went in, we decided we weren't going to do that. So we committed to an office and, started building the staff up. And it was literally me, my business partner. We hired an admin, and then we had 1 installer to start. And I think the first full year we did, almost 1.3.
So you grew sales by $500,000 the first year.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Wow. And so, well, let's unpack that for a second. So how did you do that? How did you go from 800,000 to 1.3 million in a year? Were you just spending a ton of money on marketing, or was it just, 2 brains? Like how do you experience that sort of growth?
I mean, there's multiple facets of it. When we got in early, it was pretty obvious that, it would be easy to grow the team around what's going on. I think they hit their capacity because they wanted to hit their capacity. They only wanted to do so much. They didn't want to have a lot of staff and, some of the baggage that can come along with that. And so it was only that way because they wanted it to be. And so we didn't have to ramp up a lot on the marketing side. The brand was pretty established, and so they were running about over 50% repeat and referral business.
Wow.
Which is pretty substantial from a marketing, side of things. So we did little marketing tweaks, but, we were still having to dial that back just because we had to keep staffing it to keep up. And we didn't want to, we went in really heavy on, we're going to have the best customer experience in our industry. And so we had to make sure we had the staffing, in order to cover what we did. And we would ramp up the marketing only when we were more comfortable with staff levels and all that, because we didn't want to, it's real easy to get overwhelmed, in that repeat. And we've tried to keep that repeat and referral number where it's at, as a percentage, just because that's a good indicator on how we're taking care of customers, And so that kind of, it was kind of that, it's like, I was recruiting people from O'Reilly that I knew and bringing people over and, just bringing the right people and, getting out there. And we drove our average ticket up, or, I was pretty adamant about running a certain margin. So we started off early with that kind of culture of, making sure that, we're fair on the price, but we are able to take care of customers the way we want to, and there's a little bit of a premium in that. And so, we've just kept layering on that. Really, that's kind of the foundation of things. And then Lloyd, my business partner he's I'm a sales guy, ultimately. And operations a lot, I did have a lot of experience in operations. Lloyd's background being more, in the defense contracting world and all that. It just, kind of really focused on marketing, focused on our finances, focused on, the office and building the right structure around that and making sure that we have good phone service and we have good practices and we're efficient and we're not wasting a lot of money on, extra redundancy processes in the office and all that. So it was kind of a nice marriage of like, cause I'll go hard and fast, and sometimes maybe too much to where, if there's not some kind of a backstop, you end up with customer service problems because you get out there, and I was out doing sales early on which was a lot of fun, by the way, but you can drive it too fast and end up, some of the wheels can start to fall off. And so Lloyd was just there kind of helping us keep the wheels on, so it was fun. That was then early on. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a really interesting point because I think some people that aren't in a franchise yet or just getting started, like they don't even realize that like with some businesses, like you can be as busy as you want to be. And that's the beautiful thing about a franchise and really business ownership is like, look, if you want to build an empire and build a huge business that does millions of dollars a year in revenue and has 20, 30, 40 employees, you can. Or if you just want to be kind of like your own thing, you can. I have a client right now that's buying an existing business. It's in like the small business printing space, and he's getting it for cheap because the guy who runs it's like 70 years old. He doesn't have a team. He one-man bands it. And, this guy's going to get it for less than, really like a 1 to 1.5 times multiple.
Wow.
And he's going to have the opportunity to go in there, bring in a sales guy or bring in an operations person to run the show. And like, I think he could legitimately 2X, 3X the entire business probably within just a couple of years, which is fascinating. So,
in our world, with budget blinds particularly, and I will mainly talk about budget blinds because it's so much more substantial of what, we're doing. It's almost, you just have this dividing line between folks that want to go out and build it as big as possible, or just want to, ultimately just have this nice little profitable fully controlled business. And you can look at financials and, the in-between, because getting from A to B is expensive, right? You're not extremely profitable in the mid period. You definitely invest a lot of money in building the team and the systems, and, you make a lot of mistakes in growth, and you have turnover and, trying to get the right mix of everything, so it's definitely like in our case, there was a couple of years of, we had growing volume at, huge clips, 50%, 30, 35, 40%, year over year. And you look at the profitability back at what we bought it from and what they kind of profitability they had, because they just out of their house, no overhead, husband, wife, versus, our intent was always to grow it and grow it as big as possible. And so we knew that you're going to have to put some of that capital back in order to, get to where you want to be. But people will get stuck. They get stuck there because, maybe they can't afford to do 2 years of that, or, they get their lifestyle of, this is, I'm used to this and I'm making this, I can't take a step back, so you really kind of have to know that, you have to be prepared for that. And, it's cool. It is cool that you can do both, but
it is.
For everybody knows that in between period, it's not that we're not profitable, just not near as profitable as the previous owners were, or we are now,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, tell us a little bit about the scope of your operation. So like employees, how big is your business overall? And I don't know if you want to just, mention the 5 territories or whatever you feel comfortable sharing, but like tell us about the business, the type of revenues you're doing, the amount of employees that you have, and like the magnitude of the business.
So currently, thanks to COVID, actually, so we had a when COVID started, it was a little daunting thing for us, considering we're in people's houses all day, every day. And,
Yep.
The instinct was, we got to dial everything back and make sure that we're going to be able to, stay whole and keep this business afloat when it first went down. And as most people know now, the demand for things, especially in home, went through the roof. And, so right now, last year, we did about 4.2 million in the 5 territories. And we did about 3-4 the year before. So, that was and that was just the 1 year run up.
Wow.
So 2020 was funky because it did take that hit early, and we kind of dialed back, and then, then it kind of came alive towards the end of the year. So we were still comp positive over year, but last year was it was pretty insane growth in, on a big number already. Right now, currently our team, we have 15, we have 5 sales folks, I have a sales manager, we have 3 installers, an install manager, and we have a few people in our office. We have a finance manager. And then now we have a general manager. That's kind of a newer development over the past, say, 3-4 months.
So that's an example of you reinvesting back in the business, right? You guys had a huge year, reinvest some of those profits back into a general manager, which now I would imagine, they may just be getting started, but at some point it'll be able to offer you a better quality of life, right? In theory, because they're handling some of the things that you may have handled, right?
Correct. Yeah. And that's kind of that next layer of, taking, and what it really amounts to is you can kind of grow yourself back into just being distracted and busy and getting sucked into things nonstop, and that's another thing that I think, we've learned and gotten better at, is putting those layers in place, because, as an owner, you want to be focused on the high level things and the things that can help grow your business. But if you're not careful, you can just be in the grind all day, months go by, years go by, and everything kind of stands as it is. And so, yeah, that investment back in, honestly, it was a few months ago, but, in the time gained back, what I've been able to spend my time on in the past few months is significantly better than what I was spending my time on before he came into the picture. And I feel like I'm going to add a lot more value. I've spent a lot of, I've kind of taken on marketing from Lloyd. We're redoing our whole financial side of the business because we outgrew it, basically. So that's a big project of, trying to redo the whole, the financial side of the business for QuickBooks and the P&L and all that. And so that's all we're working with consultants right now to kind of revamp all that to be the size of a business that we are.
Interesting.
And so and also too, for valuation purposes and, everything else. I mean, it's all, that having that side of things is extremely important to the value of the business overall. And so now I get to spend my time on big strategic projects. We had our first strategic planning meeting at the end of last year. So with our managers and the owners, and we come in and, we're talking about big strategic initiatives and things we can do better and grow into. And there's other markets, that we can focus on and kind of layer on. And, the marketing initiatives, there's just some really, and timing wise, even from the marketing side, because home improvement stuff starting to kind of trend back down, and we're still holding, pretty strong in the scheme of things. And so that allow him coming in, the manager coming in, has allowed, Lloyd and myself both to start focusing and really pay attention to these high level things and be strategic about it, and hire consultants because we can, and we can afford to do so, to get some experts to come in and give us ideas on how to be more profitable and how to, spend the money the right way and to continue to grow the business. So it's, I would say that have a little bit more flexibility. It's not as stressful, right? Because it's fun. Like the business building part's what I really enjoy. So it's kind of back to that part.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it's so cool, and I love it because, I think you and I are wired probably very similarly, which is why we got along, from the beginning. But it's like, I mean, you're a builder, you're an achiever, right? And so it's so cool that you're, because some people have the misconception that, okay, I buy into a franchise, I'm going to get everything that I want or need in order to grow this business, which, I call it a business in a box, like kind of like from IKEA, right? It's like you're going to get the instructions overall. But I mean, if you really, really want to be a top performer, you're likely going to have to make some of your own investments into, like you said, I mean, you guys are hiring consultants and different things like that to increase your profitability and make sure that you're growing and scaling your business. So what would you say to someone that is either just getting into the franchise space or thinking about getting in around making investments into themselves with consultants or coaches and different things like that, so that they can, if they have a desire to really scale and build, a business?
The one thing I will say, and we've been really good about this, is follow the rule book. That's the one. If you're not gonna follow the plan with what the parent company is doing, it's probably not the right thing to go into a franchise business.
Yeah.
Because in 9 times out of 10, they're trying to do the right thing because they want to grow their business as well, and that's the beauty of it. And it's real easy to go, well, I would do it this way, right? But it's all those processes and things combined that make everything cohesive. And so I think because we have such a partnership with HFC, which is our parent company for budget blinds, I would say that, like, following the rule book and really partnering with them is huge. That they'll tell you really how much you want to spend on marketing to grow. They can help you with that. They can help you. We have a CRM and a really nice system to work off of, which again adds value to the business, but it also makes you operationally sound. So if you're going to do the franchise thing, you have to reinvest back into the business, obviously, and it's normally, number one, it's people, it's, just, you got to find the right people. You can't hold on to people that, aren't right. You got to cut bait every once in a while and try to build the right team around, my old boss at O'Reilly used to say, you got to put the round peg in the round hole. You can't have the square pegs. And, so, it's those, you invest in the people, and then, really, the marketing side of things. So if you have the right people doing the right things and you can drive the marketing side of the business, it's pretty easy to grow ultimately if you're in the right market.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think an interesting point, I mean, I know you talked about Lloyd, your partner, and kind of what your roles are in the business, but how has it been having, a partner and really that division of responsibilities? And do you think that you would have been able to, outside of the, obviously there are the financial benefits, right? You can pool financial capital to be able to scale quicker because you guys bought additional territories. You're able to have some acquisitions to grow, which I think would be interesting to talk about right after this. But, what has that been like, and how helpful has that been, having a partner, and any advice to anyone who's considering buying a franchise or anything with a partner?
So a partnership's like a marriage, and there's all the, you hear all the caveats about partnerships and how they fail and all that. And I think it's really important to know, one, that you're going to enjoy spending a lot of time with that person, that you have your goals are like-minded. You have to be kind of focused on the same goals in life, in business. And then I think having offsetting strengths is, really the biggest key that's made us work so well. Is, we're not trying to overstep each other. We just have a lot of trust, and we're able to go do things without even having to communicate with the other sometimes. We just trust each other enough that we're doing the right things all the time. And, and you have to have that trust. It's part of the deal. And when you make this kind of investment, you're spending the bulk of your life, invested into this business or whatever it is, there's a lot of passion and there's a lot of, time and involvement. And you really just want to make sure that, one, you're not overstepping, you're not going to be the same type of personality trying to step on each other's toes because you have a little different idea of how things should be. You just got to kind of find the lanes and pick and choose the lanes and say, I'm entrusting you to go this way and do these things. And we can come back and we'll talk about it and like bounce ideas off, and kind of the same in the other direction. I think it's extremely important. And I could always see where it could go sideways on folks, all those caveats to it.
Yeah.
But it really is, you really have to be very careful up front and make sure you really find the right person to do some things with. But when you do, man, imagine it's just two of you doing two different things, and it just allows for you to be better. I'll get like a quick example. I'm really always involved in driving the business and the numbers and the goals and the, all the stuff and which I'm sure you can relate to. And Lloyd's he's the president of our advisory council for the franchisees. I'll say he kind of we got franchise of the year last year, and it's really because he's so involved. Oh yeah. Thank you.
Oh, congrats, man.
I appreciate it. He's so involved with corporate and the franchisees and just, and the I'll call it the politics side, but it kind of is that, right? And there is a lot to gain from that. And I've learned a lot from him with that, because I'm just like, I'm a trailblazer. I'm independent. Like I'm just going to go and, him going and kind of working that side and building those relationships and creating partnerships with other franchisees, because he's helped them come along and all that. It's been a really good example for me to know, like, some of the things that I, if I don't have, because he's a lot older than I am, if I don't have him anymore, in the future, if he, decides to retire or whatnot, then, I have a better idea of the whole picture where, so I can see where his strengths gain us ground in along with mine.
Yeah. Well, that's it. That's really cool. And yeah, congrats on Franchisee of the Year. That's a huge deal. That's really exciting, because you guys are, budget blinds is a big concept. How many territories or franchisees are there in the system?
There's over 1,200.
Wow. So that's a huge accomplishment. That's really epic. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Man.
And I really, we do a lot. Corporate's local, and, they send everybody down to train, and, we're always welcome, because we're the largest franchise local to them. So we allow them, we just spend a lot of time with them, and it's mutually beneficial, and, we have a lot of fun, and there's a good culture with corporate too, which, that's kind of a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
In contrast to Regis and Supercuts, but
culture is important in the way, they're different with different brands. And so, yeah, it is. That's super important, right? Can you talk about that? Like how would someone really get a feel for that for the beginning? Like hindsight being 2020 and like taking a look back, like how could you be able to see like the red flags or be able to really distinguish that as like, am I going to actually enjoy being a part of this?
So, when you start getting into franchising, I think it's real easy to get blindsided by, what's going on. And they control the narrative. The franchisors will onboarding you, they're selling. They have a whole department. That's what they do is sell franchises. And, I think, there's a lot of ways that you can, because they do discovery calls like we do, on both sides. You do discovery calls with other franchisees. I think you really want to ask a lot of questions and understand that if you can talk to franchisees within the system that are successful, that you can relate to them, that, because I think there's franchises for different personalities, even, and so I think you don't want to get blindsided. Like, I'm just excited about the whole thing, and I just want to do this and all that, and not do your due diligence and not ask the questions and not really do as many discovery calls as you possibly can. and see how excited the franchisees are, but see how their personalities are, and see if it's somebody that you can really relate to. Because I could tell you for sure, if we go to do discovery calls with Regis and Supercuts and the successful franchisees on that side versus with budget blinds and HFC, they're different. There's different personalities, different ways of getting excited. The operations are completely different, like Regis is not a sales organization. So if you're a sales driven person, they're a operations and marketing company ultimately, where budget blinds it's in-home sales, and, sales is, kind of drives everything. And then, everything else just comes after, where you don't have a lot of control over that on the Supercut side, So you just got to know where you want to go. Are you really good at, finding good people and putting a structure around, and maybe, dabbling in the marketing, or just a really good rule follower, I guess is, there's franchises for that.
Yeah.
Or are you a little bit more dynamic, where you're sales driven and you are a networking person, and you find a franchise that kind of fits that, and find franchisees in that system that you can relate to. I think that would be my best advice, is, see what they think. Don't just put your blinders on and be like, I want to do this because it's exciting. And, I got sold the goods, definitely do your due diligence, because you can get burned in the system. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I tell people that all the time. Like when people come, like I had someone one time, they came to me wanting to look at it. They were looking at a pizza franchise, and, they came to me basically like, hey, like we've pretty much made up our mind, but we want to hire you because I do like coaching and stuff. And I'm like, well, if you already made up your mind, like, why would you want to hire me? And they're like, well, to make sure that we're making the best decision. And I'm like, well, the first thing I'm going to tell you if we work together is that there's no way you could know if you want to do this. You haven't even seen the FDD yet. You haven't even been to a discovery day yet. How in the world do you know that you want to do this? I'm like, you can't have that. You can't get emotionally excited. Like you can get excited, but you got to go in there cautiously. And guess what? They wind up not doing that business, doing a completely different business. And they're like, we are so happy we wind up working with you, because we would have made a huge mistake. Not that the pizza business is a bad business, but depends on your goals, objectives, and the food business is a beast, by the way.
Yeah. Food industry, I don't even think I would touch it, but that's a whole other thing.
I left for a reason.
Yeah. The business I thought I wanted to do was Supercuts. And now I know I don't really enjoy that side of things, right? It's just not a good fit for me personally. I see so many people that are successful in that model and it works great for them. It's not me. And the business that I was like, I don't even know anything about window coverings. That doesn't even sound interesting to me. It turns out to be, the perfect business for me ultimately. So it's crazy.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It is funny because I do have people sometimes, and I hear people say, they're like, I don't know that. And what's funny is those same individuals that I work with, they wind up buying a martial arts franchise. And at first they were like, what is this? And then they wind up falling in love with the concept for a variety of different reasons. But I mean, talk a little bit about that. I mean, in terms of like, I remember in the beginning you said, hey, when your mom brought up budget blinds, it was like, you were like, I can't really see myself doing that. So what was that turning point? And then what advice would you give to someone that, in order to be more open-minded so that they can align with a better business? Is it about just making sure they're choosing the right model?
Yeah. I mean, I think, again, not getting too excited and, getting sold the goods essentially, because it's not really the franchisor's responsibility to 100%. They do have some skin in the game to pick the right franchisees ultimately, but some are better at it than others. Some put a little bit more care into like personality traits and different things that better fit their business model. But for me, I'd already had a little bit of contrast with the Supercuts slow going. It's going to take a long time. And you get one store and you kind of know what one store is going to do. One store is not going to do it for me. It's going to have to be multiple. And so if it's taking this long to do one, how long is it going to take me to get to 10, 15? And, and so without that contrast, I don't know that I even would have done the budget blinds thing.
Interesting.
Because once I got my hands on that and I saw, the margins and the scalability and, the lack of boundaries as such as, you have a little retail location or you have big geographical, areas to cover. This is the daunting part was me. It's like, I don't have the construction background or any, cause we're, out there doing installs and all that,
Yeah.
But, you quickly realize that one, installing window coverings is not extremely complicated.
You installed mine at my store.
Oh, that's right.
Didn't
I
you?
totally did. It's because I didn't want to send my installers all the way up there. I was like, oh, I'm going to go visit my Supercuts and install the blinds at the same time. Yeah. And I ended up doing that Smile Direct Club in the same parking lot. I ended up doing the Front Wave Bank in the same parking lot.
Did you? The sun was killer in that shopping center. I mean, at a certain time of the day, the sun would just beam in there and just destroy you. So yeah, those blinds did very well.
But yeah, so it just the more I looked at it, I'm like, I can do this, I can grow this, and it's already substantial enough that even if it was as is, it's still doing better than what we would be doing for many, many years doing the run up for Supercuts. So it was a lot about timelines and the ability to grow. I will say, and I'll give, so our parent company, Home Franchise Concepts, they have a lot of these brands now that are in-home sales. They have, closet remodel, garage remodel, bathroom remodel, cabinet company. They have concrete, and they're all very similar business models where, and I've learned now, like trade businesses are going to get consolidated over time. It's always been this handyman, this and that, it's been very fragmented industry. But if you think about younger generations, they're not really doing any of that. They don't want to work with their hands necessarily, so there's just, it makes it hard to hire. But what it's also going to do is those business owners will retire and get out, and then it's going to get consolidated. And I think, the industry that we're in now, along with some of those others that the parent company offers, have some big potential long-term for consolidation in that side of the world. And because it really hasn't been done that way. And it really hasn't been, all the franchises are fairly new in that side of the world. So, now in hindsight, like I kind of realize that, I'm in the right kind of niche that is also, it's a small industry. So the competition is not crazy. So the margins are decent enough for me to take care of my customers in the way that I want to take care of my customers and not be squeezed down to a commodity price. It's just, I feel like we're just kind of the tip of the iceberg ultimately, because eventually it's going to be hard for people to do any kind of, small, any kind of small, remodeling or in-home type work, because it's just going to be hard to find the people. So if you're big enough to get, attract those people that are out there, then now you can outcompete, your competitors.
You mean in terms of the labor? Like if you're able to secure the labor?
Right.
Yeah.
So we can create the environment to secure all the workers. And then, the other businesses, ultimately, if they don't have the staff, they're not able to continue to grow. But I feel like that side of that it is, so and they've been acquiring all these brands underneath, there's a mold remediation one, so there's all that. I think they're investing in that same future of, it's going to be harder for you to just go find this local handyman. Like you need a brand that you can trust to go out and do these things. And people get burned all the time by handyman. And even in our industry, we have folks get burned by, we call them trunk slammers, or just, somebody just working out of the back of their car and, hitting up these new neighborhoods and canvassing the neighborhoods and just going out and selling just the cheapest stuff. Eventually they don't run a very good business and they go away. So,
yeah, I think that's one of the really big benefits of owning a franchise is if they have a name, at least. Like, I mean, again, I think of Budget Blinds is really a household name. Like, I wouldn't question at all I think when we were I'm pretty sure when we bought our first house in Jacksonville, we moved to Florida from California. I'm pretty sure we used Budget Blinds. Like, I'm pretty sure that's who we used. My wife handled it, but it's just, you kind of know what you're getting. It's just like, you go to a Chick-fil-A, you go to, well, maybe McDonald's, a different experience, but at least you know what to expect, even if that's knowing to expect a crappy experience. So yeah, I think that's a very interesting perspective, man, because, and I think the home services space, yeah, it's just going to continue to blow up too, for sure. And there are a lot of people who are like, I don't want to own that kind of business, but it's like, you're not going to be the one out there doing the work. Okay, you might get in trouble one or two times here as you're growing. You might need to do the work, once or twice here or there. Or if your next door neighbor wants some blinds, you might be in there installing it like Adam was. But
well, I will say that you at least have to have some aptitude for it, because it's hard to hold people accountable and hire the right people if you don't understand their role. But
yeah, that's a good point.
Actually having to do it every day, yeah, that's not happening.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, lastly, I think the last thing to touch on is like, what's next? What's your vision? Are you going to open up more of those other brands under HFC? Or are you going to continue to try to acquire more locations under Budget Blinds? Like, where do you see the vision of where you want to be, in 5-10 years from now?
Yeah, we made our fifth acquisition. So we only had 4 up until about a year ago. So the fifth acquisition came about a year ago. So we're reinvesting into that. And I think we really haven't done much the run up is still pretty heavy. So we still got a lot of return coming from that. The Nashville territories are only about a year old. I've learned, I used to just want everything, and I've learned, not to rob Peter to pay Paul in a sense. And so really trying to get the most out of what we have and make sure that we're doing everything properly. If there's obvious acquisitions, we'll make them, especially if they're adjacent, that everybody kind of knows around, like all the neighboring franchises they already know that, they can come to us if they decide they want to get out of the business. Ultimately, there's opportunities still, within what we do. So I want to keep reinvesting into the business. My business partner, Lloyd, may retire within a few years, so things may change at that point. So it just really depends on, I'm not as like go hard and fast as I used to be. I'm a lot more strategic about it. It used to be like, just gobble up everything and let's commit. And, now, I think ultimately one of the other brands would be probably the next step if we really wanted to grow significantly, because we already have the footprint and the model is the same. It's just a different part of the house ultimately. So yeah, it's something that we would consider. Part of the consulting stuff that we're doing right now with those consultants is, it is having them help us analyze things to add value to the business ultimately.
And these are outside consultants, right?
They're outside consultants. Yeah. So they're focused on, they're a cool little entity, because they're a law firm that does tax, estate planning. They're like, they do all the finance work. They have folks that can go in and even look at our product lines, buy the product line, and give us advice on pricing models and things like that.
Wow.
So there's marketing advice there. They can go, if we want to go run scenarios on buying or making an acquisition or taking on another brand within, they can help us run the models on it. And so, that's why we're doing what we're doing, is what can we do to add value? But, right now, spending the time with them, there's still a lot of things that are left on the table with what we got. And, putting the general manager in place, there's probably another year or two of us just, reinvesting in the things that we have, recognized as opportunities. Commercial window coverings, we're do minimal of that. And there's huge bids. I mean, it could double our business ultimately to get into that space.
Wow.
Yeah. So
wow.
It doesn't always have to be taking on more locations,
Yeah.
I think there's usually a pretty significant amount of opportunity still within, doing what you're doing. So, which is what they've kind of showed us, and what we kind of already knew to some extent, but, they're showing us like, you don't have to go out and spend money on something else necessarily. You can dial this in and dial that in.
Yeah, interesting. I think that's an amazing gem to cap it off on, which is it's basically like the grass isn't always greener, and you can go deeper rather than having to go wider, which
Right.
is interesting. So cool, man. I really enjoyed it. This was epic. I think there were so many amazing gems, and your story is really fascinating. Congratulations on your success
Yeah.
and franchisee of the year. And maybe I'll have you on in another year, and we'll see where things are at that point.
Yeah. Let me know. I'll definitely do that. It's been fun.
Absolutely, man. Awesome. Thanks.